No.
And we're live.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Football Friday here at 305 Takes. And we are leading in to the conference championship games for both divisions coming up at this weekend, Angel. And I know me and you got a lot to talk about. Two pretty good games. I mean, as we were talking last episode, probably the four best teams that we have in the NFL this year. I think we got it right with these four teams that are remaining.
Yeah, the Eagles, they've been the best team the whole year. The 49ers, they've been basically chasing them the whole year. And then the Chiefs have dominated the AFC for most of the time. It was them and the Bills. And then Cincinnati had a real big surge at the end that kind of made them the second best team in the AFC down the stretch. So I can't be mad. It's still good matchups. I'm just hoping this weekend of football is better than last weekend because I could say
Most
this
of those
probably for
games
the
were, yeah,
they weren't the best. They weren't the
yeah.
best.
As far as entertainment value, they weren't the best, and the best entertainment value is probably Cowboys 49ers just
Yeah,
because of
we had
what.
that. The Giants Vikings. That was a good game. Bills Dolphins. That was a good game. Ravens Bengals. That was a good game.
Yeah,
So
but none from last week. So hopefully we turn around our fortunes this week. But as always, we always have you guys covered here at 305 Takes. And let's get straight to it. Let's start off with our first matchup that we have this weekend. And we'll go. You want to start with San Francisco, Philadelphia, or you want to go Kansas City,
might as well just go in
Cincinnati?
order. The
All right, so let's do San Francisco 49ers traveling to the Philadelphia Eagles, which will be the first game on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And, you know, for this game, it's actually quite interesting because for as much as our conversations are generally based on offense and quarterbacks in particular and how we think they'll fare against each defense and what the defense and what we think the defenses will do to try to limit these quarterbacks, to me, the most interesting aspect, and I think the way this game is going to be won is how each of these two teams handles each other in the trenches because you have 49ers defense that is just really scary to go up against, and they execute everything very well, and even when you think you might have them at a disadvantage, like when Fred Warner is covering CeeDee Lamb, then you realize, whoa, Fred Warner might be the best
He's actually
linebacker
very
in the
good in
NFL.
coverage.
Yeah, and he was stride for stride with CeeDee Lamb. So like it's not even like you can say, oh, that's a case where we got them in a matchup that we wanted. But for me, I think the biggest matchup for this game is how can the Eagles offense face off against this 49ers defense?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could also say vice versa. How is this 49ers offense going to go up against the Eagles defense? Because the Eagles, I think they were number one in sacks this year, and I think it was not even close. I know because they put up that stat, like how they were close to 85 and 84 Bears. I didn't like the stat because it kind of implements that they're just as good as them, which they're not. But I would say the battle I'm looking most forward to, well, obviously, like you said, we talk a lot about offense, but I want to see who has the better game, Nick Bosa or Hassan Reddick, because both of them have been awesome this year. I've made the case that Joey Bosa should be an MVP candidate if it's a non-quarterback, but Hassan Reddick has had just as good as a year as probably Nick Bosa. It's just it's not as loud as his season has not been as I would say numbers wise, not as great as Nick Bosa, but I think impact wise, it's been just as big because I mean Hassan Reddick has been amazing for this team. Obviously, you have Fletcher Cox, you have Brandon Graham, you have a bunch of other guys on that defensive line, and then for Nick Bosa, you could say the same. You have Eric Armstead, you have Kinlaw, you have a bunch of other solid pieces there. So to me, whichever defensive line has the better day, I believe that is the team that will win because both of these teams really love to run the football, and it will be nice to see who can stop the run first. So I am very curious on that part, but man, it's going to be exciting. I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that because both of the secondaries they're kind of like they've been sketchy or iffy the past couple of weeks. So I would say yeah, this game to me relies mainly on which defensive line dominates more.
Yeah, and with the Eagles, they have an offensive line that we've talked about multiple times. It's one of the better units that honestly one of the better units that we've seen, I would say, the last couple of years when you just look at the overall talent from Kelsey at center, Lane Johnson at tackle. I think that it's a really impressive group. And so the 49ers, they have a really talented defensive line. They go, I would say, three deep at defensive tackle, and then you have to deal with the monster and Bosa on the edge coming around. And I think it will be a little bit more interesting because Hurts, I mean, you can say he wasn't 100% last week against the Giants, and I mean, didn't even really matter in the outcome of the game. He ran the ball 9 times for 34 yards. It did look like he was trying to get down most of the times instead of, taking that contact. And, the 49ers have that incredible stat that every team that's played them this week, the week after they lost. And I think that's just physically due to their physicality. Like they're a team that's going to impose their will play after play. So I do wonder if the 49, because I thought this was going to happen last week with that Giants game, especially because they were so familiar with each other and with the success that the Eagles had on the Giants previously with rushing the ball. I thought maybe, there might be a couple shots, kind of close to the whistle, maybe even a little bit after the whistle. You take the 15 yards just to see how Hurts will respond to that type of physicality and what he'll do, with his body if he was going to try to get down. But to his credit, he did get down. I think a lot more to try to avoid that physicality. But I think it's going to be imperative for him this week to probably lean on running the ball a little bit more because I do think for as good as that offensive line is, I do think that there's still going to be ways to get pressure, especially if they disguise some of their looks and
Yeah.
try to confuse Hurts because it's really a defense that is very locked in. They don't make a lot of mental errors, and D'Amico Ryans has been either in the NFL or coaching for a long time now. So it's not a lot of stuff that he hasn't seen personally as either a player or a coach. So I do think that definitely helps them. But I'm very interested to see what Philly can do in the air because, like you said, I think you used, a good choice of words with this 49er secondary where there's been moments where they have been shaky. We saw them in the wild card round give up a long touchdown to DK. DK had a really good game against them. I thought we talked about it on the last episode that I thought CD Lamb might have just been the best player overall on the at least offensively
Yeah.
for Dallas last week. So, it is something that I think they can be exploited with. And this is a Philadelphia team that used a first round pick on Devontae Smith. And, it's not like I'm criticizing them or anything. He's already had the connection with Hurts and he already has 1,000 yards receiving going into this year. And they have AJ Brown. AJ Brown, they traded their first round pick for and signed him to an extension. And, this is a game similar to how I was saying with DK Metcalf for that Seattle game. Like, if you want to be considered one of these top dogs, and we see wide receivers every offseason, start complaining because there's nothing to talk about in August and early June. There's nothing to talk about on ESPN, so they start breaking out the top five rankings of position groups, and you see wide receivers all the time mad that
Yeah.
this guy's ranked above
And
them. Or
also how last week AJ Brown kind of showed he was upset in the Giants game, and then this week they asked him if he was upset. So I feel like maybe the Eagles might want to try to get him involved early
Yeah,
in
and
the
I think
game.
I think if you're one of these top dogs, like you have to put up a really big game. Like this is a game to go to the Super Bowl, and
Yep.
this is AJ Brown who has seen his team. Was he on that Titans team that made the AFC Championship?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
he
on
was
it
on that team. He was on the team that was the one seed in
and got
Tennessee, and they
bounced.
got beat by Cincinnati. So it's it's not like this is his first time here. I think this should be a situation where he could put up a big number, and then they're I would say they probably have like what three options. I would say AJ Brown's like their number one, and then tied at two is between Devontae and Goddard because I really think
Yeah,
Goddard's
it's
a really,
probably
really good tight end. But we've seen this 49ers defense, that's kind of where they are strong at. They'll take away your tight end option, they'll take away over the middle of the field. So that is something I'm also interested with because we've had discussions on can Hurts be that guy if you make him stand in the pocket and beat you from the pocket and not use his legs. So
I
this
mean, he's
this
shown it
this
this year.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity for them to really take that next step forward. So I think this is going to be a really really fun physical game, almost like a throwback game, like an AFC North type of game where you're just going to be like, oh, I know it hurts just to be on that field right now.
I hope so. I mean, I've always loved those AFC North games. We talked about before those like Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers games. That was legitimate like prison football. Like you were just gonna get ugly hits left and right. Teams that just flat out didn't like each other. I don't know if that's the case for this time because they play in opposite coasts. They rarely play each other, so I'm pretty sure there's no rivalry here. There's not even history of a rivalry between the 49ers and the Eagles. But so far, I do say I feel like this should be a very good matchup. I like a lot of the times of what they've shown on film in terms of between the Eagles and the 49ers. So I will say I think they have a very good chance at being very good. The only thing I would just go into this game thinking as a fan that hey, these are very good teams, and you're gonna have to try to maneuver this if you want to bet on the game. Right now the spread is 2.5 at the time of recording. Now, is that the best bet? Depends. I would say if the Eagles win, I feel like they're gonna win by like 7. That's how I feel they will win by the spread. If the 49ers win, I believe like it'll be like a field goal, maybe 4, and they'll have like a go-ahead touchdown. The only thing now I will want to see is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has to be he he can't show any like yips, slumps, or any bad throws because this is the playoffs. That first half you had against Seattle, you were very bad. After that's kind of cleaned up. The Cowboys game, you really didn't do anything. That was mainly the Cowboys kind of like shooting themselves in the foot constantly with Dak's turnovers. And he really only had one touchdown drive. So now you're going to be facing a defense that's better. So I am going to see that. But if I had to pick a winner and a score, I'm going to say, man, I got to go back to I got to stick with my regular season pick that I had 49ers over Eagles 27-24.
See, like as far as betting wise, if personally for me, I would stay away from this game. I'm just in the boat where I just want to see what happens in the field. I mean, this is the number one and number two seed overall in the conference. I think this has been proven for a long time that probably these are the best two teams in the NFC. I mean, we talked about it in the last podcast. The 49ers haven't lost a game since week 3 of the NFL season, or since the Chiefs game when they just got McCaffrey. They've lost 3 games since week 3 of the NFL season. And when we look back on the Eagles schedule, I was trying to find a team that was kind of similar to what, because there's so many coaches that, are from the Shanahan's tree. So I went back, and the closest I could find was the Packers game on that Sunday night where Philadelphia won 40-33. And you have Mike LaFleur over there, who does come from that tree and runs a similar type of zone rushing scheme. And, they were able to find some success. The Packers ran in that game 21 carries, 106 yards. AJ Dillon went for 8 carries, 64 for 8 yards a carry. They kind of bottled up Aaron Jones a little bit, 12 for 43, 3.6 yards a carry. But that was Philadelphia's worst graded rushing defensive grade for according to PFF. So if that's my only thing with Purdy, if the 49ers can find success and kind of balance and lean on that running game a little bit more, which they weren't able to do last week against Dallas really, and it came down to Kittle making an incredible catch, Purdy making some pretty big throws and some good spots on third downs and stuff like that. The guy, if just the only betting advice I would kind of give, because I think everything's going to be pretty even, and I don't think that there's going to be too much value out there. The one advice I would look for is maybe a play on Ayuk over receiving yards in that same game against the Packers that I was just referencing. That's one of the games where Watson continued a streak of scoring touchdowns in consecutive games. He went for over 100 in that game. So, if you say maybe Ayuk plays that Christian Watson role that Green Bay had against Philadelphia. Maybe he goes off a little bit more, and I'm sure Philly's going to be especially keyed in on Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. So I'm very torn on this game. Honestly, for me, I'm gonna go Philadelphia as the winner, and I'm gonna go a final score. I'm gonna go super low scoring. I'm gonna say 17-13. Philly wins. I think it's gonna be hard for both teams to move the ball. I don't think maybe Purdy throws an interception, but I don't think it'll be a backbreaking interception. I think it'll be more on like, wow, they were really kind of putting something together and he threw that pick there. So like maybe they're just right outside the red zone, not necessarily in the red zone. So that doesn't necessarily lead to quick points for Philadelphia. And I think the 49ers defense will be up to the task against this really, really strong rushing attack in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, hey, that's the good thing with football. You never know what's gonna happen with this. So, I mean, I'm just looking forward to it. I feel like we have a very good game ahead of us, and I think now would be a good time to transition to the Nets' very much anticipated game, where we have the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the AFC Championship game again, and at this point, it's probably become what, the Arrowhead Invitational at this point, because
I
every
like
year,
that.
every year it just seems like they're gonna host it. Because I mean, some way, somehow, the Chiefs will host the AFC title game. So there's that, and then you have the Bengals coming in. And before we get to the analysis of the game, bro, I gotta ask you: does anyone talk more trash for a non-good player than Eli Apple?
I I I'm extremely confused by that. Like I get being confident in yourself, but like at some point, like a mirror is not that far away, brother. Like a mirror is not that far away. And it's not even like, all right, like I get it, you're on a good team. Like, if it wasn't for this team, you would be out of the NFL. Like out of the NFL. Like you burn your bridge for the team that drafted you in the first round. So
They
it's not even like
got
you
rid of you
can
after 2 years.
and
You
it's
were a
not even
top
like you
10
can
pick.
fall back on that as like pedigree, like, oh, I'm a first round pick, top 10 overall. Like that team didn't want you anymore. Then you go to New Orleans, who needed help on defense. They were quick to get you out of there. And now you're literally clinging on to your NFL life. And we're gonna act like we didn't see you get burned by a backup quarterback and Demarcus Robinson in the wild card round.
Oh my god. And it's honestly quite unreal how much trash he talks. I'm just like, it's one thing if you have like Pro Bowls, all pros, like if you're a top five corner, cool. I wouldn't have an issue with it. But he is so bad. Like if we rank
Or
the
even
20,
if you were Trayvon Diggs, who gave up 1,000 yards but led the NFL in interceptions.
that's
All right, you make
valid.
plays on the ball. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't take it away from you. I'm not
yeah,
out there, but you
exactly.
get
You can
burned.
negate that. But if we rank the Bengals 22 starters, I'm pretty sure Eli Apple is ranked number 22. And if I could put him lower, trust me, I could. Because for some reason, he's a starter. I don't know why. I don't know what the coaches see with Eli
And the
Apple.
funniest things are the replies to his tweets where it's like his Sunday night football thing where they're introducing themselves in the school they went to, and it's PFF rated 100 out of 105 rated cornerbacks is Eli Apple, and people replying, if you were as good at football as you were on Twitter, you would be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he would be a Hall of Famer. Like, there's no question. He could retire right now and they would induct him. But but we digress. Let's get to the game, and at least we know there's a lot of anticipation in this game because it's kind of like what the narrative is going to keep going to the Bengals win. Do they just own the Chiefs and Joe Burrow is Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs kryptonite, or are the Chiefs going to go to their third Super Bowl in 5 years and Patrick Mahomes can basically start becoming the the guy in the NFL of like saying everyone has to run through me in order to win a Super Bowl.
And I mean, so for me, there's two questions. The first question is just how limited will Mahomes be? Because I think it's obvious to everybody he's playing in the game. Like there's no questions about that. But just how limited will he be in the game? because we've seen him play banged up before. He had the ankle injury in 2019, and it limited his mobility, but he was still able to, be out there and moving around and still kind of playing Patrick Mahomes type football. Last week we saw him, have a few plays right after the injury occurred. He did the, one leg and hop over to hand the ball off, and then in the second half, I don't think it affected anything he did as far as passing, but you could tell like that creativity, that little just buying yourself a couple more seconds was not there, and that's kind of what we come expected to with, or it's kind of what we've come expected for Mahomes, because he does make so many plays where you're like, oh my goodness, like how did he throw this ball? He either gets rid of it like the half second before he's about to get sacked, or he just barely makes a move where you're like, how he like, it didn't even look athletic, but he made this move and now they're 15 yards down the field.
Yeah, I mean the best example is for what that Sunday night game against the Bucks. He rolled out at near the goal line, makes a defensive lineman miss.
Yeah.
Devin White's coming in to tackle. He spins out and he just flips it to Edward Hilaire at the back of the end zone, and it's a touchdown. And it's like, wait, how did you do that? So I mean, it's
Or this year with the underhanded pass to McKinnon, who
McKinnon.
takes it all the way down to the end zone. It's like, what are we doing? Like, this guy's not playing the same game as us.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of unfair sometimes, but no, that is true. Will be limited, and it's gonna be see how limited he is. So that's why I'm very curious to see how the Chiefs are gonna use the running game. Because to me, they have good backs. I like Pacheco. McKinnon has been solid for them. You have McCole Hartman that you can use for jet sweeps. You also have Sky Moore for that. So I really believe if the Chiefs really wanted to, I believe they can rush for over 200 yards in this game. It's just I don't know if they will commit to the run, which I think they should. I mean, if Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain, I figured you might not want him to throw the ball as much as possible. And if you could run the ball effectively, which I believe they can because their offensive line is good, and it could probably maybe, who knows, the Bengals will probably load the box in, and then you could take your shot passing the ball. And who knows, maybe MVS gets by anyone or Juju, maybe Kelsey for all we know. And then you could get those big chunk plays. So to me, if I'm Kansas City, that would be my strategy going into the game. I would try to run the ball as much as possible. And who knows, maybe if you run the ball and you take time off the clock, Joe Burrow and that offense is not on the field.
Yeah, and this is a matchup similar to the ones that we've had in the past couple of rounds, where we did see this matchup earlier this year as Kansas City traveled to Cincinnati in Week 13, lost 27-24, and in that matchup, they didn't do it too often, but they were kind of successful on the ground. Pacheco went for 14 carries, 66 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. McKinnon went 8 carries, 51 yards, 64 yards per carry, and then to your point about MVS, he had 6 targets, but only 2 receptions, but he had 71 yards on those 2 receptions and 35.5 yards per reception on those 2 targets. So there is a game plan to have it work, even with Mahomes being limited. It's just the problem is how limited will he be? And then on the and then for me, because I mentioned this on Monday when we were discussing the Jags, and just like, all right, if Mahomes is not 100%, take away Travis Kelce. I get it. I get it. I'm on a podcast, and it's way easier to be saying that from the vantage point of my room with the posters in the back, with my hoodie on because it's a little chilly. But do everything in your power to take away Travis Kelce if you can. I get that it's easier said than done, but if he's not going to be 100%, that's legit the only other guy you have to worry about. Like, okay, if it's kind of similar to like when you in basketball, when you go up against a superstar and you sag off maybe a couple extra steps off the other guys, and you're like, all right, if Grant Williams is going to make 8 threes for me to lose this game, then
I'll
that's
lose
that's how it's
badly.
going to have to be. Yeah, like that's how it's going to have to be. It's one of those type of situations. If MVS is going to go for 140 yards, all right, then I guess I'm not going to the Super Bowl, and that is a scary proposition when you consider the cornerbacks that Cincinnati has and who we just discussed. But on the flip side, I'm very interested to see how Cincinnati or how Kansas City deals with Jamar Chase. So, do you
Yeah.
know over the last two postseasons, Travis Kelce is tied with Jamar Chase for 24 uh, pass receptions that have either resulted in a touchdown or a first down. Those are the two players that are tied over the last two postseasons. And over that stretch, Chase has 513 yards in those last two postseason runs. So, and he's kind of the thing is he didn't have a great game the last time they met, but over the last couple of times he met, I believe, yeah, over their last three meetings, he's caught 24 passes on 29 targets for 417 yards and four touchdowns
That's
in
still
three
great.
meetings. And I know, yeah, and I know one of them he went for a majority of those yards. I think he had over 150 in one of the matchups. So like you can do what you want with those stats. The one that the thing that really pops out to me is 24 catches on 29 targets. Like there's like no overthrows or like DBs making plays on the ball. Like that's like holy crap, you're almost batting perfect there on that. And that's kind of how it's been with the Cincinnati team. And since they started 0-2 to start off the year, they've been on a 13-3 run. So it's just like it doesn't make sense because you're like, all right, we know that their defense is like super solid. Like you can say like their game plan discipline, they know everybody knows their job, but it's like they don't have necessarily any superstars.
Yeah, they
So
don't
you're not
have
like
a
just
Chris
keying on,
Jones.
yeah, you're not keying in on like one person. You're like, oh, he's wrecking the game and that's how they're winning. And then on offense, like, all right, you know how the offense is. You know they got Higgins. You know they got Boyd in the slot. You know they have Chase. They got Mixon. P. Ryan's been pretty good for them in bits and spurts this year. But in the postseason run, outside of Chase being in the end zone, I feel like it hasn't been this like huge air it out offense. So it's not like they're feeding into the stereotype that we kind of have for them going into this game, which is why I think this one is really fascinating. I don't know if, like you said, if what if Cincinnati deploys a similar game plan and they're like, listen, we know Mahomes isn't 100%. If we go up, 10, and now he's got to drop back every play, and we deploy a similar game plan as the second half of last year, and we drop 8, and our defensive linemen are just keeping him in the pocket, so he's got to move on that ankle. What happens then? So similar to the NFC Championship, I mean, this one's kind of a throw my hands up in the air type of matchup because I mean, I get how good Joe Burrow is, and it's a really cool story. And I've mentioned on the last podcast, like we're gonna have to start having another conversation about him if he goes to back Super Bowl appearances. But like, if you would have told me that there's a team that's gonna beat Patrick Mahomes 4 times in a row, I'm gonna be like, yeah, they're not right in the head.
Yeah,
But that's what Cincinnati
you
has the
would probably would have
opportunity to
bet
do.
money. It's like I bet $500 right now that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
You
I probably would have taken
easy
it like
money.
minus 500 too, like $500 to only win 100 because like I wouldn't have believed that was a thing.
Yeah, I mean that is there. I also do want to talk a little bit about the Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes aspect of this. The take that I just couldn't stand. They said Joe Burrow's the better quarterback, Patrick Mahomes is the better player, which boggles my mind because yeah, Patrick Mahomes clearly he plays special teams, he plays defense, he does everything. So at that point, just say it. You feel like Joe Burrow's a better quarterback, but I also feel like that's just your taste because Joe Burrow just stands in the pocket. He doesn't really move. Patrick Mahomes mainly extends the play. So that's where
It's
they're
honestly similar to me, like if you ever had a strong take between Brady and Rodgers,
yeah,
because like both excellent players, but just different styles of play. Like Brady's never going to extend the play. Like he wasn't really making any sidearm throws. Like
never.
Rodgers was the first one that kind of got on that wave. He had a couple years where he was actually like kind of relying on his feet. So like I think it's a conversation similar to that because we both understand that they're really good, but they're really good in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So you have the oh man, but I am looking forward to a very good
I
game.
think this one's going to be honestly, and then like since we did, a little bit of betting advice in the last one, I'll give out a couple that I'm going to be looking at
All
to
the
see if
prop
there is
bets.
any value. I would look at maybe some Sky Moore or even Kadarius Toney over rushing yards because, like you said, I think they're going to just try to get the ball into their playmakers' hands because going into most matchups or I mean, I don't think they necessarily want to, but going into most matchups, if they're told after the game Mahomes had to throw the ball 55 times, like he dropped back 55 times, they'll be like, all right, that's not what the game plan called for,
Yeah.
but it's Mahomes. This game, I think if that happens, they're like,
They're done.
SOS code red. So I do think they're going to be trying to get the ball into guys' hands just to see if they can make plays. We saw last week they tried the reverse with Sky Moore and he almost got his head taken off by Rashawn Jenkins and somehow did not fumble the ball. So I don't know if they go back to that after the one game sample size
I
that
feel
they
like it
had
might be a
against
different player. I
Jacksonville.
feel like might be Kadarius Toney just because he's more nimble on his feet.
Or even, I mean, he's not that type of player, but he does have the speed. If you get him, MVS, he does have the speed to,
Yeah.
really take off. But and then, I mean, the thing is with Pacheco is like that's their RB1.
Yeah, he
So
has to
I
be.
would be looking at a lot of Pacheco things. I just think people, obviously I think the sports books will, have in mind that Mahomes' injury in effect. So I think his numbers are going to be way too out of whack to actually, put anything on it. But it's going to be a fascinating game, and it's just really cool that it worked out this way. That these two quarterbacks are the ones that are going to be go
Yeah.
making the deciding factor on who's the representative for the AFC in the Super Bowl. But I just wish that we had a fully healthy Mahomes, and I hope at least he's 85% or higher going
So at
into
least make the
Sunday.
game more fair.
Yeah, yeah, just because I want to see both teams at their absolute best. I
Yeah.
think this is a really fun matchup, and it's kind of like, I mean, we're too quick to try to put rivalries on everything now, but it's fun to
It could
have these
be.
matchups and them be so young in their career so that they mean something. So it's not necessarily a rivalry, but these games mean something every time they link up.
Yep, that's true. And then my last take for this game, I would say for the Chiefs to win, you have to limit the scoring in the first quarter because the Bengals live on scoring in the first quarter. So I would say if you could limit it to like only a touchdown in the first quarter, I feel like you have a very good chance going forward because they showed the stats of how the Bengals first quarter scoring, they're up there with everyone. After that, they are a normal team in terms of scoring. No, obviously it's going to be different because of the Chiefs defense are not very good, but I feel like now we can probably get into predictions and scores. I'm going to stick with my regular season pick. I had the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl. I'm going to pick the Chiefs 28-27.
I'm gonna run it back with the score that they had when they met in week 13 this year. I'm gonna go 27-24. And I'm gonna call this Patrick Mahomes Kurt Schilling moment. I think he's going to do just enough and be out there clearly fighting pain, but he'll do just enough and they'll take care of it at home. It pains me to go against the Bengals because I just love that they are always out here looking for motivation, trying to find different ways to just get that edge. And the fact that they have this offense that they really built out of nothing. And then you have Brandon Bean, the GM of the Bills, saying, I never want to suck bad enough to get Jamar Chase. Like they got teams in the AFC shook, man. So I'm gonna run it back with that score. I just find it hard to believe, even with a banged up Patrick Mahomes, that he's gonna lose four straight times to one team. So I'm gonna run back the same score, 27-24, Kansas City over Cincinnati. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, that's good. And guys, I'm gonna have to say that's probably it for our Football Friday. We don't really have much more to talk about. The games are all over. And at the time of recording this, um, we are doing this because one, we have both have plans to take care of stuff before the weekend, so that way we can enjoy the games and we could watch them fully, so that way we could come back on Monday and talk to you guys about it. So we are very excited for this weekend. We hope you guys are too. We have a
Yep.
lot of
It's gonna be some good football, some good,
good football.
exciting physical football. And it's not I wouldn't believe anybody in the next 24 hours that gets on your television and tells you that they have a strong belief that in either game that we have that either team is going to win by a decisive matchup. I think
Yeah.
that is just all for clicks, and we should all be very, very thankful that we have these four matchups and the football that's going to come because of it.
Yep. So we got a big weekend ahead of us. We hope you guys enjoy just as much as we do. And we'll be back for you guys on Monday to talk about this. And we'll even talk about the Super Bowl matchup that we're going to eventually see.
Yep. And until next time.